Mr. Speaker, I rise to talk about how for over 200 years, lawmakers have come from every state in the Union to work and live in this district. The city was not meant to be a prize of conquest like the ancient walled cities of Europe. It was not meant to be the hub of trade like the early American cities. Above anything, it was meant to represent a center of the federation created by our Constitution. The city is tied to the idea of the American Republic, a living piece of collaboration. The star on the map representing the 50 stars on the flag. With the creation of a 51st state of Washington-Douglas Commonwealth, a state the size of a small county, that collaboration will be gone. The majority believes it is a small price to pay for 2 senators. Republicans need assurances that the interests of our constituents will be reflected in this new state that will have undue influence over the nation's federal government. And so my motion contains reasonable additions to H.R. 51 that will require the President to assure certain amendments to the state constitution are incorporated before granting statehood. These provisions reflect the entirety of the nation's views, not just those of cities controlled by Democrats. There is provision that prohibits the former capital from becoming a sanctuary city. These are provisions that prohibit taxpayer funds being used for political campaigns. These are provisions to protect Americans' Second Amendment rights. These are provisions that provide full funding for law enforcement, that prohibit the destruction of our national monuments, that prohibit the creation of so-called autonomous zones. Since the early entry of new states into the Union, Congress has required that constitutions of the new states reflect certain considerations before granting admission. Nevada and West Virginia were required to prohibit slavery. Various Western states were required to permit or prohibit polygamy. These requests do not violate the Supreme Court's equal footing doctrine. But the idea of the state of Washington-Douglas Commonwealth containing wholly within it the entirety of the federal capital does in fact violate this doctrine. A state with a controlling influence over the nation's federal government and capital is simply not on equal footing with the other 50 states. It is above them. A vote for the majority's design for D.C. statehood is a vote for D.C. superiority. The founders recognized the status of Washington, D.C. House Republicans do not support deviation from their vision. However, if the Democrats insist on creating this new state, it is only fair that it be established as a state with policy values that more closely reflect the rest of the country. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this motion to recommit.